What's up, everybody? Thanks for being with us. It is the Jock Market NBA Show. You know how it is. We roll at you every day, or every Wednesday anyway, 1 o'clock Eastern time, talking a little bit about what's going on in the association. We're here with you for the better part of the next half hour. I am Adam Kaufman. You got Geoff Ulrich, the dynamic duo that is self-proclaimed. I don't know that anybody Moose actually calls us that, but I've decided, at least for the purposes of this show, that's us. How are you?
I'm doing good. I guess we'll decide if that duo sticks. We can get through some good info for the people today in the Jock Market streets.
Well, Lord knows we got plenty to give the people because we got a busy slate on our hands. Got an 11-gamer in the NBA tonight. It's, pretty standard for a Wednesday. In fact, this time last week, we were talking about a 13-gamer. What's interesting, and we can kind of look at these individual games and which teams have been hot, which teams have been cold. You got some high scoring projected games as well, some injury news to watch for over the course of the afternoon before lock at 7 o'clock Eastern tonight for a lot of these games, and the main slate for anyone that's looking at things from a fantasy perspective as well. Of course, this is Jock Market, so we're looking at players more in the sense of stock market sort of mentality and in-game wagering and buying shares of guys and all of that we're used to talking about, obviously. But what's interesting about this particular slate, you look at it, there aren't a ton of studs here that necessarily jump out at you. You got Giannis Antetokounmpo, of course, Kevin Durant, who was in action last night in that Brooklyn blowout loss to Steph Curry's Warriors, his old squad. Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Davis, who is technically probable to play, so we should expect him out there. Still no LeBron James. There's James Harden. And then you get to another tier where it's the likes of LaMelo Ball and Julius Randle and DeMar DeRozan. Russell Westbrook is kind of in that next tier. He sort of bubbles between the two. But the bigger names, we're not as top heavy as maybe we typically are for these bigger slates.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I know just looking at the slate is kind of the first thing that came to mind too. There wasn't any stud that really stuck out too in terms of the projections, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in a bit too. You've got Giannis, obviously, the highest fair value on Jock Market right now. He's the highest in the Awesemo projections too, and he looks like a pretty good. He still looks good. I know Chris Middleton's back. That's going to change things a little bit for his usage, but I don't know if we're going to see full Chris Middleton tonight or anything like that either. So all things considered, he rates out as a top play. Actually looks like a guy, maybe you buy into that fear a little bit that, with Middleton being back. I don't hate that. But other than that, there's not really a stud, like you mentioned those names that I think people are going to be flocking to, really kind of just flat on the projections too under that and then that next tier. And then we've got some guys perking a little bit. So it feels like a night where maybe you want to load up on the mid to lower tier guys because, we've got a lot of injury stuff too. And there's some guys who could be available for really cheap, but man, their usage and their upside going up, it's going to be pretty big in these spots. So
the way this works, of course, here with Jock Market leading up until the start of the first game, which again is 7 o'clock Eastern time. You got a lot of games at 7, 7:30, 8, not much in the way of later games here tonight to watch for. Anyone that you're interested in acquiring on the open market, that's basically the way you chase this down. If there's a player you consider to be a favorite to finish at the top of the rankings, you can invest as much or as little as you'd like, between $1 and $25 per player. And we'll take a look at fair market pricing and where things stand in terms of their IPO prices as we talk here. Of course, hours away from lock, but you can make your speculative bids for shares of backups as well that you believe will make an impact, which is something to watch for with respect to injuries, for instance. And we don't have to go too far down this road just yet because I want to get back to some of the bigger names. But just as an example, if you're someone like me, a little bit of hometown bias, if you're someone that likes to take a look at, let's say, the Celtics, you might say, man, I don't know if I feel Al Horford tonight with Robert Williams. Well, guess what? Robert Williams, because of an injury that he sustained last game, he has just been ruled out. He was originally listed as questionable, only moments ago ruled out for tonight, and so he is not playing. Suddenly it makes a guy like Al Horford look like a much, much better play, especially in the Jock Market scene as well. So just among the types of things that we'll talk about. But going back to, you brought up the Awesemo projections that our own Alex Baker does. And what I think is really interesting, listen to these names, okay? Giannis, Towns, Davis, Durant, Harden, Ball, Randall, Lillard, Westbrook, Tatum, Trae Young, DeRozan, Anthony Edwards. All right, all of those guys are projected at no better than 5x return on value, and most of them are sub 5x. You got to go all the way down, Geoff, to Jalen Brunson with Luka Doncic out for the Mavericks tonight to find a guy who is in just an amazing spot in terms of projections. He's projected for north of 40 fantasy points. We can again get into his jock market, but I think that's just such a great example of how incredibly messed up this slate might be tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I mean, that's just one of the injury situations. I mean, we've got so many guys questionable, like big names. Jimmy Butler is another guy. Like Tyler Hero could be in for like a massive value play too. So a similar situation could be forming there. We'll see how the Lakers things slides out. I mean, Davis probable, but I mean, again, like we don't have any of these players projected for huge nights. So I think that it does lead itself to more like it's almost like a wait and see approach, like wait and see how these guys get ruled out and just kind of try and pounce on the best looking values. You mentioned Brunson. We definitely have him projected, like you said, like just in terms of IPO versus like where he is on the jock market. I mean, he looks like the screaming play here. So definitely a player like you can start off looking at, but again, because the news is injury on Brunson too, like that's not going to be a shock to people, right? So you may be battling it out with more people there. In terms of top plays, I do like the play I don't mind investing in, and this is probably a play I'd go heaviest in, is LaMelo Ball. Mm-hmm. Again, you've got like one of the higher paced games here, just in terms of pace these two teams play at. You got a big point total. Washington and Charlotte, obviously. So Ball, you look at his past performance on jock market too. I mean, 5 top 5 finishes over his last 9 starts. He's returning value for people. He's even got a first place in there like 10 games ago or 9 games ago. So it's a guy who's, again, very good matchup. We have him like slightly above expectation for his fair value, but he's really been producing. And with all these other big names too, like his IPO probably won't get out of control. So LaMelo Ball is kind of the guy like I would start with on the slate.
At the moment, $8.85 and projected for just south of 45 points. Our projections, though, have him at about 40 points. He's $8.90, the fair IPO right now. The projections that, of course, you can find on the Awesemo page. If you find yourself interested in picking up the Awesemo weekly pass for NBA, just to try this thing out. It's not even $5 a week. Get into it, give it a shot. And, it's a great opportunity to win cash, obviously. Questions like this, Geoff, are always ones that I like to receive, especially for a show like this one, because Jock Market, it's such a unique, it's such a niche show. From Devin RJJ in the chat. Any advice for someone just finding out about Jock Market? Educate the people, Moose. This is your chance.
Yeah, no, I mean, Jock Market, it's really just about, looking for, I mean, and you're trying to get you the best return on your value. So you're investing, but it's not like, obviously it's not like just rostering and then paying an entry fee. You decide how much your entry fee is by how many shares you pick up and what share price you're paying. So realistically, like you want to buy these guys at the best price possible. And you want players who potentially the market is overlooking because they're not going to be bid up as much. Right. So I mentioned a guy like LaMelo Ball. I mean, I think LaMelo Ball is going to be popular, but he might be a little bit undervalued here just because there's other big names on the slate. So, kind of looking at him from that. But there's other players like that too. So, obviously we want the guys who have that expectation for us, potentially get us a ceiling night. But realistically, your return on jock market is all about what value you get it at. It's like an entry point in a stock market. Well, if Apple goes up to 100, if you got in at 90, it's really not that good a trade. If you got in at 50, it's a great trade, right? So it's the same thing with the players. If LaMelo Ball goes off and you got him at like $10 a share versus 15, that's great. So you're just really looking for the good value, trying to make good bids. And a lot of this comes down to in play too. Like you can bid on players in play. If they start cold, you can get good opportunities. If they start hot, maybe you sell off your shares quickly. It's all about trading, and it's a lot of fun. And we'll try and mention a few more guys here, obviously, who we think you should be targeting on the slate.
Listen, man, 100 for 90 sounds pretty good to me, but I'm also the guy that right now is like, buy for 60 falls to 40. So, anything that we could do to finish a net positive sounds all right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing, right? You are just trying to look for net positive. And
Yeah.
again, I mean, we are going for ceiling. I mean, not every player is going to be like a boom for us, but you do want to try and really target those guys who have that like top 5 finish ability. So
You mentioned it before, some of the higher scoring projected games tonight in terms of point totals, over unders. You got the Wizards and Hornets sitting at about 220 at this moment, 221 and a half for the Lakers and Bucks. Again, Giannis is playing in that one. LeBron James is not. He could return on Friday, but tonight is not that night. And of course, Anthony Davis is probable, dealing with that thumb injury. Chris Middleton, by the way, probable despite the health and safety protocols. So looking like he could return. Brooke Lopez not going to play. Also, how about this one? Kings Timberwolves 227. That is the fat total of the night. That's with everybody projected to go, with the exception of Naz Reid, who at the moment is questionable with a foot injury from Minnesota. Karl Anthony Towns, Cat, as we know, has been very, very good this year, averaging about 23 points, 10 rebounds, pretty close to that anyway, and always a threat for a double-double, get you some serious points. But is that the game, just because it is the projected highest scoring game, the one that you're keying in on, or is there one that you find more interesting tonight?
yeah, I mean, it's obviously always got to, we've got a close point spread and a big game total. I mean, that's going to attract a lot of eyes, right? So I think we need to take a look. I mean, Karl Anthony Towns, definitely like a pretty safe player in terms of investing. We do have him like a little bit as like a solid investment. I mean, he's projected for over his fair IPO price. He's been a little bit busty, like over his last like kind of 10 games on Jock Mark. He did go off in his last one, finished 3rd for the night. But all things considered, like I think in this matchup, again, like I mentioned Giannis as like maybe a safer play, but I feel like Karl Anthony Towns, even with just like the recent kind of few bad games here, I feel like his upside here is pretty solid tonight. Again, you've got, you look back at his last performance, he's gone through a bit of a cold stretch, but like, before that, he was really consistent, putting out the top 5s, top 6s. So I think just looking from a Jock market return perspective, it's a player tonight where if people aren't going to like jump in on him, and you can get him for cheaper than Giannis, again, we're talking about like what your investment is, how much you're going to invest. You can probably pick up more shares of Karl Anthony Towns, maybe even for a better price than Giannis. I feel like people will just flock to Giannis, maybe just because he feels like the safest play. But yeah, I prefer Towns over Anthony Davis. I feel like in the spot for sure. I think you could also look to Anthony Edwards. Obviously, like, kind of had some massive games of late. So I think that's going to be the 2 most popular spots there. One player who, I always don't mind targeting, De'Aaron Fox, pretty consistent as well. Could be a player just like falls under the cracks here with everybody just kind of focused on the 2 Minnesota guys. So
Anthony Edwards, good play, obviously, as you mentioned. Certainly just looking else around that game, D'Angelo Russell's in a real good spot as well. Sacramento side of things, I mean, maybe Tyrese Halliburton jumps out. He's not necessarily someone that I think people aren't thinking about. We know what he's capable of. Patrick Beverly as a potential cheaper option is positioned really well for Minnesota in that game also. So it just speaks to what we were talking about before, Geoff, with some of these obviously, like if you're an NBA fan, and I can't imagine you're watching this show if you're not, all these players that we're talking about, but when it comes to like superstars, all-stars, those quote unquote household marketable names, it's not necessarily a night for them. It's that next tier. It's, like, is Christian Wood going to go off tonight, obviously, for Houston against Oklahoma City? And mind you, we all know how bad this Rockets team has been. Rockets right there. So they're an NBA worst 1-13. They are 0-8 on the road. They've lost 12 straight games. Eric Gordon is probable to play, the groin injury. Kevin Porter Jr. questionable with the thigh. And worth noting, maybe just because it provides a little bit of confidence for the Rockets, maybe it's totally meaningless. I don't know. You decide how you want to look at it. But the only win this year that the Rockets have came against OKC, and it was a blowout. It was almost a 35-point win in that game in late October. As we know, these are 2 teams that are rebuilding, that are trying to figure things out. Thunder and Rockets, they've both been part of that for a couple of years at this point. I don't know. This could be one of those wonky games.
Yeah, I could see it. I mean, just trying to look through the projections here, like guys who you might want to be thinking about targeting. You mentioned Christian Wood off the top. Pretty boom or bust. He's been a little bit more bust. So this could be a spot too, where you just kind of get a player like that, like a really kind of under low sentiment. I mean, that's probably who I would be targeting there if you're going to pay up for somebody in this game, because it kind of, I don't know. Like I think that's the one thing about this game. Like, I guess Lou Dort might be like, I'd be someone you could look at too, just in terms of value. But I was just going to say, like the sort of more value options in this game don't have that much appeal. I think Christian Wood is probably in a good spot. I think that's like a player who, again, like we know from his ceiling and stuff like that earlier in the season. I mean, it's there for him to potentially come through with the top 5 night against an opponent like this. So I really don't hate that play. I wanted to mention from the Sacramento game too. I'm going to butcher this guy's name. Maybe you know how to say it, but Chemezi Metu.
Metu, yeah.
Metu, yeah. Anyways,
it is Metu. The first name it always screws me up too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's Chemezi, I don't know. Anyways, but he's in a good spot here. He didn't play much in the Kings' first 10 games or anything, but he's averaged over 19, or he's gone over 19 minutes in the last 4. And he's averaging like over a fantasy point per game. So he's gonna be like a really cheap option, I think. Again, like we've got a big point total there, close point spread. I think Medu is a guy you should be kind of looking at there. When you're like looking for cheap guys to invest in, that's one player from that game that again, we know has a lot of potential.
We got you for another 10 minutes or so. Obviously, we're bouncing around. If anybody has any questions, put them on in the YouTube chat, Twitter, wherever you're finding us. We appreciate it. We'll get to them before we get out of here. Help you out with some good plays tonight. Remember, these are transferable plays. What I mean by that is, we're talking about Jock Market, but also, what we're talking about in terms of just, the players themselves, the guys available to you and what kinds of spots they're in, that translates to DFS. You're thinking about making your lineups wherever you play them. Keep them in mind season long, even same kind of story. I'm taking a look at, I mentioned before that Celtics and Hawks game. So Jaylen Brown remains out. Robert Williams is obviously out. Al Horford's in a good spot. And his Cantor could even potentially get some run. He got some minutes after Williams went down the other night, performed well in very limited minutes. Jason Tatum, I talked about the stars. He just, he'll get you his points. What I mean by that, like he'll score 20 plus, but he is just shooting abysmally so far. Is that a word? Abysmally so far this year. He's shooting at like 32% from the field, career worst for him from the field, from 3, from the free throw line. He's avoiding contact like it's the plague. He is not at all been what we generally expect from Jason Tatum so far this year. While Dennis Schroeder, by the way, in a starting role with Brown out, is absolutely thriving. He's averaging north of 20 points a game. So if you're looking at this game, Celtics and Hawks, and a Hawks team, by the way, that was really struggling, had lost 8 of 9 before winning the last 2. What's your approach to this one?
Yeah, I mean, I initially sort of was interested in Tatum, but I think you're right. Like I think it's better to go with another player, like one of the peripheral ones, like either Horford or Schrader. Those are the 2 guys that really came. I like Schrader. I mean, I think you're right on and saying like Atlanta hasn't been as good over the last little bit. And again, like we need to think about this in terms of upside, like which player do we really want to invest in here? Is it Horford or Schrader? I feel like Schrader with Brown out is the one who gets the boost, right? Like he should. Mm-hmm. His usage is the one that really gets like the big jump here. So I haven't seen like I don't think this is really a player that people like talk about too much either. So I think Dennis Schrader is like the guy I would target from here personally. You're more connected in there, but I think you're the one who brought him up, so I think you're kind of in line with that. I'm just trying to see where we have Schrader listed here on in terms of just projections, but I mean, I'd be kind of surprised. It also might not be taken into the injury.
Yeah, he's $5.15. That's on Jock Market currently and projected for about 35 points. But I'll see where we've got him as well. He is projected where we have him currently is he's 747 or pardon me, he's projected for about 28 points. His fair IPO price is $2.80.
Yeah, so I mean, him and Horford both kind of, I feel like maybe just like simmering under a little bit in the projections. But I mean, I don't think they're going to be guys that you need to bid up. Like that's the other thing. Like regardless of where we have these guys projected, if they're IPOs, on Jock Market aren't like they're probably not gonna be flying through the roof either, right? So I think Schrader again is the guy I would be targeting here. I think just with that usage and with just his past performances here, like we know this is a spot where he could go off. That's who I would be targeting on the Celtics tonight. And I actually think that's like, again, if you're looking for like a basket of investment here on Jock Market, like with the mid-tier guys tonight, which we kind of talked about off the start, I think that's the player I would be like pretty comfortable looking at. So
this Cavaliers Nets game at 7:30 tonight, Geoff, really interests me because it shouldn't, right? Like generally it shouldn't. We're talking about the Cavs, who actually have played a little bit above their heads. But, with Brooklyn, good bounce back spot, obviously, after that, really demoralizing loss last night against Steph and the Warriors. Yeah, we know like Harden's going to be out there. Durant's going to be out there. Paul Millsap, questionable personal reasons. At last check, Joe Harris, he's questionable with his ankle as well. But for the Cavs, it's sort of the wait and see that you were talking about before, because Kevin Love, probable health and safety protocols. Jared Allen has been ruled out. Evan Mobley is out, of course, for weeks now with the injury that he suffered the other night against the Seas. Colin Sexton out. Lauri Markkanen out. So there could potentially be value all over the place here for Cleveland.
Yeah, I mean, I think most people probably going to be thinking about CD Osman in this spot. That's fine. I mean, again,
what about Ricky Rubio and Darius Garland? Like,
absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. I'm just saying, like Osman probably like the first guy that comes to mind, just because he's like the cheaper play, someone maybe you could get for cheap on Jock Market, and that's the first one. I'm not even sure if I like him that much. I know the usage is like he's going to be on the floor a lot, but he's not really like a big fantasy points per minute guy. So I actually like, I think I would almost prefer Rubio in this spot. Again, I mean, he played 37 minutes in his last game. He's probably going to push for over 33. And, again, like Osman, I mean, even on like a good day, like, is he really going to get us there into like a top 10 on like finish? I don't know. I think Rubio is probably where I'd rather be investing in. So I kind of like Schrader. Like, I just feel like another player who gives you that like opportunity to get like a top 5 finish, perhaps like a really, really huge ROI on Jock Market. And again, you look at I was just looking at Schrader's finish. Actually, these two are like really comparable in terms of fair value too tonight. But, Rubio was second like 5 nights ago, had a second place finish. He's got some big finishes in terms of ROI, like return on investment at the end of the night over his last, 15 games. So that's the type of player where it's a little bit more boom or bust. But if you get exposure to a couple of these guys with like pretty cheap IPOs, I mean, they can, you just really need one of them to hit. So it's kind of like, again, instead of, going with like a Rubio Schrader pairing is almost like instead of investing in one of the top guys, you get exposure to 2 guys. And I think they both have like pretty good ceilings in this spot. So,
it could be really solid too from that Cleveland game. How about Dean Wade? Super cheap, obviously. Taking a look. Let me see.
Sounds like a guy you just made up. I mean,
I know, doesn't it? $1.72 is his fair price right now. He's projected for 20 points.
Yeah.
And just super cheap option. In fact, our projections, we got 30 cents on the dollar for projected for about 18 points.
I mean, he's just like his fantasy points per minute is just so bad.
But again, it's opportunity cost.
No, I know, but like, yeah, no, I agree. Like he's going to be out there. And I guess if you want a cheap option with like I said, like, I think everyone's just going to be piling into Osman. So I think like, I'd rather, if maybe you could get, again, this is just like the IPO strategy on Jock Market. Like you're probably gonna be able to get Wade for really cheap because most people probably look at him and be like, yeah, this guy's kind of useless. And he has been from a fantasy production, right? But it doesn't mean, I mean, he's still playing 30 minutes a night. He could certainly, at some point he's probably going to show up with some production. So yeah, I don't mind it, but you're right. I mean, like the rotation is so short. You kind of got to look at everyone there, right?
So I'll tell you some of, again, our own Alex Baker, some of his favorite plays tonight based on value and obviously what their pricing comes in at and what their projection could be. We've talked about a lot of these names. Jalen Brunson, Horton Tucker, who we've not even mentioned yet, is in a good spot for the Lakers so long as LeBron is out, obviously. Patrick Beverley, CD Osman, Metu, Patty Mills again.
Yeah,
Dean
the other
Wade.
side of that game.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's interesting with
Tony Bradley, we haven't talked about for Chicago with all those injuries and health and safety protocols and guys that are out. So there are a bunch of good ones here.
Yeah, Absolutely. You know, I mentioned Lou Dort from that Oklahoma Houston game as well. Like he's projecting as a really solid value. Rubio's up there too. So I think there is a little bit more to that Rubio play than even I suggested, although we both did like him. So yeah, those are kind of some of the, and Medu's up there too as well.
Yep.
So we did mention him. I like, those are some of the value guys I'd definitely be looking at. I'm just going to give like one semi hot take here. Again, this is a player who's, I mean, he's projecting pretty well today. If I remember correctly, I don't have his name up here. Maybe I should just get up here just to see where Alex has him. But yeah, he's projecting actually like as a pretty good points per dollar play. He's kind of just under like the really, really good options, like in terms of value score or whatever. But DeAndre Ayton for Phoenix, it's a really good matchup against Dallas, man. You know, this is a team that's allowed just some monster games to guys in the middle. I know Phoenix is more balanced. Like they kind of just rotate their big three, Ayton, Paul, and Booker kind of just rotate. But this feels like a spot against Dallas where like you really want to get DeAndre Ayton on side in some way. And with the bigger slate, I feel like these are the kind of players who just kind of go under the radar, and you probably won't have to bid up too much, right? So DeAndre Ayton's kind of like just my guy that, again, I don't even know if it's a hot take. I just like him. And again, I think on this slate, like I'd rather be targeting the Rubios, the Aytons, that kind of range than going too crazy with investing in like too many studs tonight. Because it does feel like a little bit of, I'm not really sure like which stud I necessarily love. So yeah, DeAndre Ayton kind of like my last little guy I wanted to throw out there.
Some of the big injury stuff to watch for, well, big and small over the course of the afternoon and evening, obviously. Let's see. Bradley Beal, he's probable with the personal reasons. You got Bertans and Hachimura are out. Gordon Hayward is probable. PJ Washington is out. No Kelly Olynyk for the Pistons tonight. Again, Jaylen Brown, Robert Williams, they're both out for Boston. You got Kevin Huerter's questionable. The hamstring injury for the Hawks. For Cleveland, again, this one is a mess. Kevin Love is probable. Jared Allen, Evan Mobley, Colin Sexton, Lauri Markkanen all out. Paul Millsap is questionable along with Joe Harris. Those both for the Nets. For Miami, you have got Jimmy Butler is questionable. Bam Adebayo, same story. Victor Oladipo and Markieff Morris are out. Zion Williamson remains out for the Pelicans, certainly. Jalen Suggs returning for the Magic from that ankle injury, while Nerlens Noel and Mitchell Robinson are questionable on the other side for the Knicks. Lakers, again, Anthony Davis probable. LeBron James is out. Chris Middleton probable. Brook Lopez out, other half of that game for the Bucks. Naz Reid questionable for Minnesota. No injuries of note for Sacramento, so that's good news right there. For Houston, Eric Gordon probable, Kevin Porter Jr. questionable, Luka Doncic, again, that's a big one. He is out tonight. Maxi Kleber is out as well, pardon me. Frank Kaminsky questionable for the Suns. Alex Caruso probable. Nick Vucevic is out. And Damian Lillard questionable with the abdominal injury. Obviously, if he can't go, unfortunately, you're going to find out about it probably long after every other game has locked, and you'll just have to react accordingly to something available to you on that 10 o'clock portion between the Mavericks, Suns, Bulls, and Blazers. But we'll see. So those are some of the bigger names and smaller names as well. Yeah, but there's a lot to unfold, a lot to unpack here over the course of the rest of the day. But hopefully, Geoff, we gave the people a little bit of a helping anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those nights. Wow, it feels like that every night in basketball, but yeah, one of those nights where, you know, right up to lock, a lot of this stuff is going to change. But just at that end note, I mean, Zach LaVine, you know, with you know, Damian Lillard, maybe like an early guy you could think about investing in, or maybe you know, even if Lillard does play, I mean, that could be a spot. So LaVine, always a guy I don't mind, a very consistent floor. So.
All right, well, check out Jock Market, folks, as we always implore you to do. It's a lot of fun. And obviously, the in-game element in terms of investing shares and guys is a ton of fun as well. It's not just, you know, set it and forget it, or everything locks and you're done. Worry about late swaps, whatever. In-game, you can start to mess around, buy shares and guys. As injuries happen, guys get ruled out, whatever it may be. But yeah, the half hour, it always flies by when the two of us are together. We'll do it again next week, obviously. Want to thank our producer for stepping in here, Mike Lawrence. You know, it's Tyler. You know, I don't know if he just earned that well-deserved day off, or if he just like decided, screw it, I'm going to go hide out in the woods or something. You never quite know with that guy. All I know is he wasn't here with us today. Mike got the job done. We appreciate him, and Moose, I appreciate you, man.
Yeah. Hopefully everyone has a fun NBA Wednesday night, and I love talking about the Jock Market stuff. So we'll see you again next week, folks.
Beautiful. I'll be back with you guys tomorrow talking a little Yahoo with someone. I think it's Ehrenberg. We'll find out together. See you later.